terrible tyrants from history.
10.
Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, was a member of a branch of the House of Basarab, also known as Vlad Dracula and Vlad the Impaler. He was a three-time voivode of Wallachia, ruling mainly from 1456 to 1462, the period of the Ottoman conquest of the Balkans. Vlad III is revered as a folk hero in Romania and Bulgaria for his protection of the Romanians and Bulgarians both north and south of the Danube. Following his raids on the Ottomans, a significant number of Bulgarian common folk and remaining boyars resettled north of the Danube to Wallachia and recognized his leadership. As the name the Impaler suggests, his practice of impaling his enemies is part of his historical reputation. The name of the vampire, Count Dracula, in Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula, was inspired by Vlad's patronymic and reputation.
9.
Joseph Stalin was the leader of the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s until his death in 1953. Holding the post of the General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, he was effectively the dictator of the state. Stalin led the Soviet Union through its post-war reconstruction phase, which saw a significant rise in tension with the Western world that would later be known as the Cold War. During this period, the USSR became the second country in the world to successfully develop a nuclear weapon, as well as launching the Great Plan for the Transformation of Nature in response to another widespread famine, and the Great Construction Projects of Communism.
8.
Maximilien Robespierre was a French lawyer and politician, and one of the best-known and most influential figures of the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror. His steadfast adherence and defense of the views he expressed earned him the nickname the Incorruptible. In more recent times, his reputation has suffered as historians associate him with radical purification of politics through the killing of enemies.
7.
Robert Mugabe is the current president of Zimbabwe, serving since December 22, 1987. As one of the leaders of the rebel groups in opposition to white minority rule, he was elected prime minister in 1980, serving in that office as head of the government until 1987, when he became the country's first executive head of state. He has led the Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front since 1975. Mugabe consolidated his power in December 1987 when he was declared executive president by Parliament, combining the roles of head of state, head of government, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces, with powers to dissolve Parliament and declare martial law.
6.
Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, alias Lenin, was a Russian communist revolutionary, politician, and political theorist. He served as head of government of the Russian Republic from 1917 to 1918, of the Russian Soviet Federalist Socialist Republic from 1918 to 1924, and of the Soviet Union from 1922 to 1924. Under his administration, Russia and then the wider Soviet Union became a one-party communist state governed by the Russian Communist Party. Widely considered one of the most significant and influential figures of the 20th century, Lenin was the posthumous subject of a pervasive personality cult within the Soviet Union until its dissolution in 1991. He became an ideological figurehead behind Marxism-Leninism and thus a prominent influence over the international communist movement. A controversial and highly divisive individual, Lenin is viewed by Marxist-Leninists as a champion of socialism and the working classes, while critics on both the left and right see him as the founder of a totalitarian dictatorship responsible for civil war and mass human rights abuses.
5.
Kim Jong Il was the supreme leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, commonly referred to as North Korea, from 1994 to 2011. During Kim's regime, the country suffered from famine, partially due to economic mismanagement, and had a poor human rights record. Kim involved his country in state terrorism and strengthened the role of the military by his Songun, or military-first politics. Kim's rule also saw tentative economic reforms, including the opening of the Kaesong Industrial Park in 2003.
4.
Ivan IV Vasilievich, commonly known as Ivan the Terrible, was the Grand Prince of Moscow from 1533 to 1547, and Tsar of all the Russians from 1547 until his death in 1584. His long reign saw the conquest of the Khanate of Kazan, Khanate of Astrakhan, and Khanate of Sibir, transforming Russia into a multi-ethnic and multi-continental state spanning almost 1 billion acres. Ivan managed countless changes in the progression from a medieval state to an empire and emerging regional power, and became the first ruler to be crowned as Tsar of all the Russias. Historic sources present opposing accounts of Ivan's complex personality. He was described as intelligent and devout, yet given to rages and prone to episodic outbreaks of mental instability that increased with his age and affected his reign. In one such outburst, he killed his groomed and chosen heir, Ivan Ivanovich. This left the tsardom to be passed to Ivan's younger son, the weak and intellectually disabled Fyodor Ivanovich.
3.
Adolf Hitler was a German politician who was the leader of the Nazi Party, Chancellor of Germany from 1933 to 1945, and leader of Nazi Germany from 1934 to 1945. His aggressive foreign policy is considered to be the primary cause of the outbreak of World War II in Europe. He directed large-scale rearmament and, on September 1, 1939, invaded Poland, resulting in British and French declarations of war on Germany. Under Hitler's leadership and racially motivated ideology, the Nazi regime was responsible for the genocide of at least 5.5 million Jews and millions of other victims whom he and his followers deemed subhuman and socially undesirable. Hitler and the Nazi regime were also responsible for the killing of an estimated 19.3 million civilians and prisoners of war. In addition, 29 million soldiers and civilians died as a result of military action in the European theater of World War II. The number of civilians killed during the Second World War was unprecedented in warfare and constitutes the deadliest conflict in human history.
2.
Henry VIII was King of England from April 21, 1509 until his death. Henry is known for his consequential role in the separation of the Church of England from the Roman Catholic Church, besides his 6 marriages and many extramarital affairs, as well as his effort to obtain an annulment of his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, which led to conflict with the Pope. His disagreements with the Pope led Henry to separate the Church of England from papal authority, with himself as king and as the supreme head of the Church of England. The disputes also led to the dissolution of the monasteries.
1.
Mongol leader Genghis Khan rose from humble beginnings to establish the largest land empire in history. After uniting the nomadic tribes of the Mongolian plateau, he conquered huge chunks of Central Asia and China. His descendants expanded the empire even further, advancing to such far-off places as Poland, Vietnam, Syria, and Korea. At their peak, the Mongols controlled between 11 and 12 million contiguous square miles, an area about the size of Africa. Many people were slaughtered in the course of Genghis Khan's invasions, but he also granted religious freedom to his subjects, abolished torture, encouraged trade, and created the first international postal system. Genghis Khan died in 1227 during a military campaign against the Chinese kingdom of Xizia. His final resting place remains unknown.